Hello everyone. In this video, I would like to just give my opinion on the Renters' Right Act, which came into force a couple of months ago now. Now, if you're listening to this, I'm going to assume that you know what the Renters' Right Act is, so I'm not going to go through it line by line and explain the regulations, because I'm assuming you know all that. But what I do want to do is I want to focus on three areas where I'm going to give my 2 cents, if you like. These are things that I've heard in various panel discussions, articles that I've read, people I've spoken to in the industry, and I've kind of formed my own views on it, and also based on my experience over the last 22 odd years. Some may think that I'm starting to veer into conspiracy theory territory, but I don't think I am. I believe what I'm going to tell you is true, but then if you don't believe it, just take it as food for thought. So the first thing I want to talk about is the big one, the abolition of Section 21, no-fault evictions. Now, the reality is that if you have a bad or a problem tenant who's in arrears, who's squatting, who's refusing to leave, it typically takes years to get rid of them. That was the case before Renters' Right Act. And now we have to use Section 8 with grounds. And I believe that's still going to be the case. If you've got a tenant who is a problem, who's in arrears, it's still going to take a long time to get rid of them, sometimes even years. However, what is interesting is that if we delve a little deeper into Section 28, eviction with grounds, and in particular where a landlord wants to either sell or move into the property, then that property cannot be let again for maybe 12 or 24 months. It's not been agreed yet. It's obvious why they're doing this. It's so that landlords don't use this as a strategy to get rid of tenants. But we all know that it is very common that we find that there are unforeseen problems. Sales fall through, circumstances change, plans don't work out as expected sometimes. So then what happens? You can't let out your property, and now it's gonna remain empty. Who wins in this scenario? Right, think about it for a second. It's definitely not the landlords or the property owners that win, and it's not the tenants. You know who wins? It's the flipping councils. They're the winners here. Let me explain why. So an empty property means double council tax. So the councils are making money from this. And the councils are also desperate for social housing because there's a lot of homeless people, a lot of asylum seekers needing housing. So they're crying out for more properties. And these councils can use two types of orders which are already existing. One of them is called the Empty Dwelling Management Order, the EDMO. With this, they can take over the management of your property if it's empty, only if it is in the public's interest. There's also something called a CPO, a compulsory purchase order, where they can force the purchase of your property given that it's in the public interest. And most likely they will take the property at the rate they want, at very much below market value. So now empty houses, they are at risk of vandalization, squatters, attracting drug dealers, vagrant type people, and the councils don't want that, right? So it would be in the public interest to then use the EDMO, the Empty Dwelling Management Order, or the CPO, Compulsory Purchase Order, to nab the property. So, many property owners, they're not aware of these powers, but they do exist. You don't believe me? Go ask ChatGPT. It's all there. They are currently being used in places that at the moment it's very much limited use, but the introduction of the Renters' Right Act, I believe, is a vehicle to accelerate the use of these types of powers to take empty properties. Now, as I said earlier, some of you may be thinking, damn, this is all conspiracy theory, but my gut's telling me it's going to happen. Okay, I'm going to move on to my second point, and this one is around a mandatory database PRS register that landlords need to sign up to. Now, we all know that data is king, information is king, and councils are building teams whose job it is to identify empty rental properties, gather information, and try and trip people up on some issues that, where they haven't been compliant. Then they'll give you fines to generate income. They've got these powers under section 16 of the Local Government Act and section 235 of the Housing Act. Google them if you don't believe me. Now, these are serious information gathering powers. Type of stuff they can gather information on: who owns the land, who owns the property. They can demand bank statements to look at your rent, also ask for your tenancy agreements, everything. They can ask for anything. And non-compliance, if you don't provide the info, it's a crime. And with all of this information and data, all of these new AI tools that are available, councils and government agencies can be very shrewd and strategic in trying to trip people up, people who are making mistakes and not following the rules. So we need to be very vigilant. And the third and final thing I want to mention is rent rates. Now they can only increase once a year, and bidding wars are now illegal. So personally, for me, not a big deal. I have never raised my rents more than once a year anyway. I've never been involved in a bidding war. But what I do have to say is that these are only the first steps for stricter rent controls. And these are coming, so watch this space. Okay, so my final thoughts on this. I know some of this can sound a bit negative, a little bit doom and gloom, but that's not my intention. I'm just sharing my views. But ultimately, my view is simple. If you are in the property market, the answer is don't panic and just professionalize. And that means keep your properties in good condition. Deal with issues quickly, especially with things like damp and mold. Stay on top of your compliance, your licensing, your documentation. Do everything by the book. Keep records of everything. And finally, make sure you've got proper, robust tenant vetting processes in place so that you don't end up with these bad tenants. So it's not about doing anything extreme. It's just about being organized, consistent, understand the rules, and don't trip up. In this environment, it's going to be mistakes and complacency that are going to create risk. It's not the actual rules or regulations themselves. I'd like to say thank you for listening. I know there are lots of landlords out there who have had enough and perhaps considering their position. Maybe they want to reduce their portfolios, exit the market. If that's the case, get in touch. Let's talk about it. Maybe I can help you stay in the game, or I can help you move on. So yeah, hit me up. Over and out.